Inspiring interviews with today's top landlords. This is the Rental Income Podcast. And now, Dan Lane.
Kori, you were with us a year ago, and you had a pretty big goal. Remind me what you're trying to do with your rentals.
We've gotten together, several business partners, 13 of us, and we're building a rental portfolio in Birmingham, Alabama, a place where none of us have actually stepped foot in.
And when you were with us last year, remind me how many rentals you had.
Yep, we had 7 properties at the time. Fast forward a year, and we have 30 under management currently.
And about how much total cash flow do you bring in? Like just your gross rent right now?
Yeah, our gross rent, roughly $237,000 annually.
You raised some money from your partners to get started. Did you have to add any new money, or have you raised any new money to add 23 rentals in a year?
We haven't had to raise any money. We did utilize a line of credit for a little while, but no, we haven't had to put any new capital in. We don't owe any money to any line of credit. We are solely focused on increasing the portfolio size, utilizing our lending partners, and have been successful without having to deploy more capital.
Buying 23 houses in a year without any new money is really pretty incredible. And on the show today, we're going to figure out how Kori did this. We're also going to take a look at one of his deals. We'll figure out what he's buying. We'll check out his numbers and see how everything's working out for him. And Kori's also going to share with us the numbers for his entire portfolio. We'll look at what his mortgage payments are, what his expenses are, and how much he's profiting. Joining us on the show today from Denver is Covrigaru. We'll take a really quick break to thank our sponsors. We'll come right back and we'll talk to Kori. It's a lot of work to find a really good rental property. And when you actually find that property, you want to make sure you're working with a lender that can get that loan closed. The lender that I recommend is Chaley Ridge from Ridge Lending Group. She's a nationwide lender, and her specialty is helping investors finance rental properties. She has a ton of loan programs, and she can find something customized to you for your situation. If you want to find out more or you're ready to get started today, just go to ridgelendinggroup.com. That's RIDGE lendinggroup.com. NMLS 42056.
Rental Income Podcast.
Kori, you live in Denver and your rentals are in Birmingham, and you told us last year that you've never been there. Your plan is to never go to Birmingham, to not have any employees in Birmingham. Is that still your goal? Like, have you been able to do that?
Yeah, it doesn't sound great, Dan, but yes, the goal is to essentially build up a rental portfolio in Birmingham, Alabama, without having to have boots on the ground to maintain those properties. That's the goal.
Now, you raised money from 13 friends to get started. Remind us how you did this, like how you were able to raise the money and how this kind of got started.
Sure. So, I've been in this industry. I've been serving the single family rental space with my company for approximately the last 10 to 12 years. And started to wonder, why have I not gotten involved? Why have I not gotten involved on the investment side? And reached out to just a few friends and family to see if they wanted to invest and to participate, be equal partners. You keep things quiet for long enough and people find out. And so the plan was to, be 5 of us. That quickly became 13, and then we had to cut it there.
So how much money did every partner put in?
Each partner has put in $50,000 for this particular fund, SFR EMO fund.
Okay.
And we don't plan on having to add more to this particular fund to reach our goals.
Okay. So 13 partners at $50,000 a piece. So that's $650,000 that you were able to raise. Is my math about right there? Okay.
Yeah, that's correct. And,
awesome.
I'll give a teaser, kind of fast forward for a moment, but our portfolio value currently, and this is based on appraised information, is over almost $2.2 million at this point.
Wow. Well, this is exciting. So, all right, so let's kind of figure out where you are and what you're doing now. Your long-term plan when we talked last year was you wanted to build up a portfolio and then you wanted to sell it off as a business, basically. Is that still the plan, or have you changed your thinking on that?
That probably came up when we talked about a year ago. The more we kind of dig into this venture, the more we realize, and I heard this just recently. I heard this saying, and I'm kind of adopted it myself, is that real estate is for buying, not selling.
Yeah.
And so right now the plan is to continue to grow this portfolio, to cash flow the portfolio, to realize the appreciation, to continue to leverage the portfolio, and to grow it as much as we can without having to reinvest new dollars.
Awesome. Okay. Well, that's good. I think that's great. I mean, I really think there's a lot of value in holding properties long term. Now, you were buying C-class single-family houses when we talked last. Is that still what you've been buying?
That's exactly what we've been buying. We've been really sticking to the same, essentially, so that all of our properties are geographically sort of in the same area, but also classed in the same, class. And that helps us streamline this operation and helps us with our property management partner.
Are you doing Section 8?
We do have some Section 8 properties. Section 8, when it works, when you get it turned on, it's great. It's automated. We did run into some trouble when we transferred the properties from one property manager to another. And, I can tell you more about that if you'd like. But
sure.
Long story short, just making sure the payments arrive where they need to arrive. That was the biggest hiccup. And when things, are off as far as the government goes and receiving payments, it creates a bit of a debacle and some cleanup.
So what's your general feel after you've been at this for a few years? Is Section 8, do you think it's good, or do you think it's not worth the hassle of getting started?
I think it's good. I think anytime you can get guaranteed payments for rental income, it's a good thing. It may be tough to set up. It may be tough to transfer, but once it's up and running, it is fantastic.
Now, let's talk about how you were able to buy 23 houses without any new money. So how did you do that? Just big picture, we can kind of drill down on it a little bit more, but big picture, how did you do that?
Big picture, we used a warehouse line of credit to purchase homes in cash. What we would do is we would aggregate then several homes. We would renovate some of them. And then we had a portfolio. And what we would do then with the portfolio is we'd go to our lender and say, hey, we'd like to refinance this portfolio or, finance the portfolio. And we then have to get appraisals. And what happens is because of time and because of market conditions and because of the renovations that we put into these properties, those properties then appraise at a much higher rate. And because we're able to leverage 85% of the portfolio, we're then able to cash out oftentimes at a higher price than we actually bought the property for and put in renovations. It's really kind of fascinating how it works on paper. Now,
you mentioned you have a warehouse line of credit. So is that basically like a HELOC?
It's just an interest-only line of credit with a bank that allows us to pull money out as needed and then put it back when we don't need it.
Okay. Now, why do you use that as opposed to using all the cash that you raised?
So we've gone through a lot of that cash. We like to have cash reserves. Interest rates at the time, right, Dan, things have changed, were extremely low and cash was free. So we figured let's use this warehouse line of credit. We only need it intermittently while we're buying properties in cash until we go to our lender and finance them through a portfolio, and then we'll return the money. And the money was so cheap, we had more buying power, we had more bandwidth. It didn't make sense not to. It was just a no-brainer for us.
Okay. So you're basically doing the BRRRR strategy where you're buying properties that are run down, you're fixing them up, and then you're refining and getting all the money out.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I mean, some of the properties are occupied, and we don't touch them, and we certainly don't touch them until they become vacant.
Okay.
But there are a great deal that we buy that are as you described.
Okay. Now, a lot has changed in the world since we talked last year. Now, and I think that's maybe made things challenging for a lot of investors, and I want to see how the changes have affected you and your business. So the first one is the price appreciation, that houses are just more expensive than they were last year. Has that made things more difficult?
Not really. What makes things difficult for us is the interest rate impact. The rise in home prices, that correlates fairly well with rental income. And so, it still works on paper. The low rates worked on paper really well. The rental income still worked really well. So, it was competitive out there, but there are deals to be had in every market, every condition, and we were pretty good, and our broker and partner was pretty good at finding them. So the home price appreciation, not so much.
All right. And so, but the interest rates have been a challenge. Your properties are maybe just not quite as profitable today as they were a year, or the new ones you're buying aren't maybe as profitable because of the higher rates?
We are feeling that compression. Our numbers still indicate that, we can borrow at rates available today and still be fine. Here's the concern. The concern is that we don't want to go buy what's perceived to be market rate for today when we know that the market is changing. And could we then wait and get the same property or properties a month, 2 months down the road for 5 or 10% less? So that's the hesitation that's causing us to kind of, tense up a little bit and slow down our efforts. We're just, we're not paused, but we're definitely offering far less than list price on almost every offer that goes out.
Okay. Inflation has also caused the price of basically everything to go up. So when you're doing rehabs, are your rehabs just costing you more today than they were last year?
We got into this supply chain labor shortage issue around the same time where we started the portfolio. And so, we've seen some change and some increase in those costs, but really nominal, because when we got into it in 2021, we already had an issue, right? So,
right.
Yes, it's expensive to repair, to renovate, to hire professional services, but it's all kind of built into our model and it's working.
Okay. Awesome. Well, let's take a look at one of your deals and just kind of dive into a little bit more of what you're doing. So tell me about one of your recent properties.
Yeah. So this particular property, this is a great example of kind of a success story of what we've seen. And we've seen this multiple times. We have had some not so successful stories, but not as much. So let's run through this property. We saw this property listed at $85,000. I'll fast forward kind of through the negotiation process. And we ended up acquiring it for about $78,000. So this is a single family rental, Birmingham, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, approximately 1,300 square feet.
What needed to be done to it for the rehab?
Sure. So this property needed some work, right? So we needed countertops, a vanity in the bathroom, new carpet throughout. We had to update some electrical to get up to code, same with plumbing, paint interior, exterior, and we actually needed a new HVAC, new AC unit for this property is what we needed. And so those renovation costs were roughly $35,000.
Okay, so $78,000 for the purchase, $35,000 for the rehab. So you're all in at $113,000.
Yep,
is that right? Correct. Okay. Now, as far as finding this property, how did you find it?
All the properties that we've been finding have been listed on the MLS. So
okay.
One thing that I've learned quickly is that there are no pocket deals. When the market is as hot as it is, there are no pocket deals to be had. So this one was publicly listed.
Awesome. So do you have a realtor you're working with, or did your realtor find it on there, or do you search every day and look for new properties?
Yeah, one of my partners, he's kind of overseeing acquisitions, nothing formal, but we all do our side job here for the organization. So he's the one that's typically finding, sourcing, and then sending over. We work with a great property management company. They help us with our renovations and broker new investments too.
Okay.
So it works really well.
Okay. Now, once you got it all fixed up, what did this property rent out for?
So this property rented out for a little over $1,050 a month.
$1,050. Okay. Now, how did the refi work? So you're all in at 113. When you got the property appraised, what did it appraise for?
Right. So this is where kind of the magic happens, right? This property, as you said, we bought it for 78, put 35 in, we were 113 in, and it actually ended up appraising at $150,000.
Wow. Awesome. So, I mean, you've got almost $40,000 in equity right there. I mean, just for fixing the property up, you've created, I guess, $37,000 out of thin air.
Out of thin air. I have overnight. It wasn't really overnight, but yeah, I mean, essentially out of thin air. That is correct.
So then with your cash, so you did a cash out refi. So you bought the property with your line of credit. Is that right?
It was a mishmash between if we had capital in the bank at the time, if we closed a loan or a portfolio and we did have the warehouse line. So yes, we essentially bought it in cash.
So then when you did a refi where you're going to put your long-term debt on it. Like how did it walk me through that process?
Yeah, so because we're able to leverage 85% and it was appraised at about $150,000, we were able to then get the loan for $127,500, right? $127,500, which essentially when you take that $127,500 and subtract the $113,000 we're in for, we were actually paid $14,500 to make an investment in this property.
Okay. And so that $14,000, that then just goes back into your fund to help you buy more properties?
Exactly right. Or as, cash reserves for future maintenance, regular payments, all sorts of things like that. Yeah, that cash then becomes ours.
And then did you put a 30-year fixed loan on the property?
The loans that we've been taking out are 5-year loans, amortized over 20 years.
And how much is your mortgage payment?
So everything all in, property tax, insurance, and the mortgage payment, about $783 for this property.
Okay, so your rent is $1,050, your mortgage payment is $783. So you've got $267 a month before any kind of expenses that might come up. But I mean, you're essentially making $267 on a property that you don't have any money into at all.
That's right. We just have the means to make the investment.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah. All right. Let's take a look at your total portfolio. So you mentioned your total rent is $237,000.
Yep.
Okay.
That's right.
All right. Now, how much are your mortgage payments? If you add up the mortgage for all your properties across your entire portfolio.
Yep. Our payment is it's approximately $106,000 a year.
Okay. And for taxes, your property taxes, how much does that come out to be?
About $25,000 a year.
And your insurance?
Roughly $17,000.
Now, for repairs, I know that a lot of your properties are freshly rehabbed, so you probably don't have a lot of repairs. And then you guys have only been at this for a couple of years here. Do you feel like you have a good handle on what the repairs are going to be?
I think so. We're still surprised sometimes by needing new HVAC or even roofs. I mean, roofs are not inexpensive. A roof is a roof, regardless of the value of the home. But I think we're right around $1,500 a year on average per property that we've budgeted for repairs and maintenance.
Okay. So 1,500 times 30 properties. So that's about $45,000 a year that you have budgeted. Did you feel like it's coming in close to that, or is that high or low?
So far, so good. We're coming in pretty close to it. We're sticking to that right now. A lot of the properties that we buy are in great condition, right? So that's been about average.
Okay. And so then you have a property manager. How much is your property management for the year?
So we pay 8% of the gross rent as a fee. And for us, it's coming out to approximately $19,000 a year.
Okay. So we take your total rent of $237,000, subtract out all the expenses. That's going to leave you about $25,000 a year.
Yep.
Is that right? Okay.
In the black.
Awesome. I mean, that's great. I mean, do you think that a lot of these properties you've been able to take out money and, with rates going up, I think that's pretty good. The other thing that is, I think, kind of the magic of rental properties is that over time your rents are going to go up. So your expenses stay the same. So do you think that your gross rent will be higher a year from now?
I do. I think that the demand for rental properties in this country is so high, and we are so short. The last number I read was about 4 or 5 million single family rentals specifically that we are short in this country, that I do. I think that, rents kind of tend to follow inflation. So it's a hedge against inflation. And I think that the demand and lack of supply that we have, lack of new construction, homes for first time home buyers, those people are now wanting to rent even more than they did before. And so I think that we'll see rents increase.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that's just going to add to your profitability as time goes by. Now, it sounds like you're kind of running the show, that you're doing the majority of the work on the portfolio. Do you feel like you could have done this without partners? Do you think you could have done this on your own?
We probably could have. It's really three of us that are putting in the legwork to get this done. And sure, we could have done it alone. I could have done it alone. I could have hired an admin to work, but that's a whole lot of risk. And this fund is about kind of getting to know and understand and feel what it's like to own tens of properties that are not geographically located close, and to see how that rental game works and kind of how we can build up the portfolio without a whole lot of boots on the ground. And so that's what we're really doing. And we wouldn't have been able to do it with such low risk without, bringing in the partners that we did.
Do you think it's an advantage or a disadvantage that you're so far away? Because part of me thinks it's great because you're not ever tempted to go over there and just fix something or to deal with a tenant. But then there's got to be some trade-offs that you're not able to do some of that stuff. So do you feel like it's an advantage or a disadvantage being so far away?
I think I have to say I think it's an advantage because first of all, you tend to look at the business as a business more than I have a property that's down the street from my house here in Denver that I own and I rent out. And I drive by it, and sometimes I don't like the way the yard looks or the fact that trees haven't been trimmed, and for some reason that impacts me on a personal level. With this, we really trust the partner that we have and the property managers that we have in the locations where we own the properties. And so I think it's an advantage. We're able to make decisions based on what's best for the business and what we perceive to be best for the resident. And we don't have to worry about, visiting the property or seeing things we like or don't like. It's kind of running the business.
One quick thing I wanted to point out before we wrap things up. Kori mentioned that his cash flow is $25,000 a year, and that might seem a little bit low on the surface, but I just wanted to point out that Kori has all of his properties on 20-year mortgages. And when you have a 20-year mortgage versus a 30-year mortgage, your payment is going to be a bit higher, and that's going to decrease your cash flow. It's really a personal decision which way to go. For me personally, I like 30-year mortgages because I'm not as concerned as growing the equity as I am with cash flow. But in Kori's case, he's not really too concerned with cash flow. He really wants to gain equity in his properties. So I think in his case, the 20-year mortgage is probably the right way to go. The other thing I wanted to point out is that Kori mentioned that he owns a real estate company. The name of his company is Planomatic, and they do rental property photos, they do floor plans, they do 3D images. It's pretty cool, all the stuff that they do. If you want to check it out, just go to planomatic.com, and I'll put a link to that in the website. You can find it at rentalincomepodcast.com/episode 386. If Kori inspired you and you're ready to buy your first rental property or you want to add to your portfolio, the lender that I recommend is our sponsor today. It's Chaley Ridge from Ridge Lending Group. Chaley is a nationwide lender, and her specialty is helping investors finance rental properties. She has a ton of different loan programs, and she can find something customized to you for your situation. If you want to find out more or you want to set up a time to talk to Chaley personally, just go to ridgelendinggroup.com. That's RIDGE lendinggroup.com. NMLS 42056. Thank you so much for checking out the podcast today. Make sure you follow the show. We put out new episodes every single Tuesday. And if you're following the show, you'll get notified when the next episode comes out. My name is Dan Lane, and this has been the Rental Income Podcast.